Thank you for tuning into Growth Island again. Today I got one of the world's leading biohackers. He is one of the guys that's been taking this biohacking and making it out to the norms, especially here in Europe. He's a serial entrepreneur as well with several successful companies. He's a co-author of the book, The Biohackers Handbook, which is kind of like the Bible for biohacking, the book that I always show when I'm out giving talks about biohacking. He is a co-founder as well of the Biohacker Summit, which is the big summit on biohacking that you go to here in Europe, and he was in America as well. So he's the guy that has the fingers on his pulse and that's like met the people that you need to meet around the world and has been testing probably too much gear, but then have the experience of what actually works and doesn't. So I'm really proud to have Teemu Arina on the show today. Teemu, thank you so much for finding time.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
Teemu, you've really been around when it comes to biohacking and tested a bunch of stuff. And there's many places where you've been talking and so on, so people can hear more about your background story, how you became one of the leading people in this. But I would really like to use some of our time on like getting some of the gold out of you. Like, what are some of the things that you are doing today in regards to biohacking that's working? But before that, potentially just you give your explanation of what biohacking actually is.
Right. So I started biohacking around 2011-12 with my own health issues. And yeah, I mean, I really like the definition that came from quantified self, which is self-knowledge through numbers. So once you have something to measure, then you can optimize towards that. Just like in sports, if you have a specific number for your performance, you have something you can optimize around. And in recent couple of years, also health optimization has been thrown around as a term. So biohacking it's in a way, it's total life optimization. It is about optimizing the environment around you and within you, which is a definition that Dave Asprey likes to give on these terms. Biohacking is much older as a term than any of the influencers on the scene, but I would say that it has been pretty much popularized by first the American movement of biohacking that originate from I guess high-tech entrepreneurship circles. Tim Ferriss is, of course, one of the pioneering people when it comes to optimizing your body and mind and learning and many other aspects of what it means to be human. And in Europe, we connected the term nature into it. So it's really better living through science, technology, and nature. So science meaning that you study the latest research and you have a strong hypothesis based on which you conduct your self-experiments. So I think the N is one is key to biohacking, is where you actually test these things on yourself. So a lot of people have opinions about health and well-being and studies they've read or whatever, but in the end, the number of people who actually did all of those things, tested things on themselves long periods of time, including different dietary interventions, are actually much more scarce than people have opinions about health and well-being. And I think true source of knowledge is when you actually have tested these things on yourself. And then you know what works or what doesn't, but it doesn't mean that something that comes out of research wouldn't work for someone else or would have completely opposite effects. So that's the beauty of science always, of course, is these things keep on evolving. But you have much higher likelihood of having a good guess that if I do this, that might happen. So, for example, if you have interest in losing weight, I mean, there is a scientific method to it, of course, to hack body composition, for example. So there is a more optimal route, and to figure out what is optimal to you, you actually have to look into genetics. You have to look at your existing biomarkers, your gender, a lot of other things. So there are individual differences, and some things might work for some other people that don't work for you. Now, when it comes to technology. That's the aspect where you have different wearables and measurement tools and techniques that you can use to figure out what works and what doesn't. And then you have technologies that you can do the interventions with. For example, certain tools or technologies to get the most out of, let's say, exercise, or the most out of your food. So those are also biohacking technologies. It could be technologies that you direct on your body specifically, like red light therapy devices, or transcranial electrostimulation, or whatnot. And so there's the measurement component, then there's the intervention component. And then the nature aspect is that we are actually, as humans, we're embedded in nature. There is a microbiome on our skin and in our digestive systems, and we live in a symbiotic relationship with the organisms and microorganisms in our environment. And understanding nature connection is key. So a lot of people who have been into biohacking, they've noticed that, I mean, you can do all these things like grounding, and you could do it like light therapy or sound therapy, or whatever, like techniques. You can do air filtration, you can do a bunch of things, you can filter your water. But in the end, if you're in nature, you don't need any of these technologies. I mean, you're naturally grounded in nature. You get like an optimal soundscape being in nature. And the natural cycles of light, when those are not polluted by modern LED lights or whatever, or mobile or computer screens, is what is natural to us. And often, like, being in sync or in tune with natural cycles, like your circadian rhythm, is what is the source of good health. So I see that a lot of these tools and technologies are for urban people, for modern people who are alienated from nature, who need tools and technologies to bring nature back into their homes. And all these measurement tools and techniques that might tell you that, hey, stand up, do some exercise, might be good tools to become more aware of yourself. But I find it ironic also that you need some kind of wearable to tell you to stand up. I mean, we kind of at some point got disconnected of what it means to be human. But then there's the aspect of biohacking, which is about transcending what it means to be human, which is transhumanism, which is like pushing the boundaries of what it means to be human. You can use stem cell therapies, or you could hack your biology directly, or you could even have some implants or whatever. You could 3D print organs. That's also biohacking. And whatever gene therapy you might go through, or fecal transplants, or whatever very invasive biohacking techniques, those are also part of the future. And I think as our environment is changing faster than we are, we might at some point need to start modifying ourselves directly. And that's, of course, more controversial aspect of it, but very future oriented. So biohacking is an umbrella term that connects a lot of different aspects when it comes to optimal health, well-being, performance, and I guess increased self-awareness. So yeah,
Cool.
that's my definition. You wanted me to dive into
Yeah,
future?
so if we start by, that's kind of like a journey of biohacking, and you have tried a bunch of stuff, and I've also been following a little bit your journey from the side, where I saw a lot of technology in the start, and now I see you posting a lot about nature as well. But if we start with what are some of like your favorite technologies for biohacking, and then we go more into like what are some of your favorites for nature that you're seeing that more people should get into? Because I think that's also, as you talked about, nature is also my understanding. That's more like the European or the Nordic biohacking is that we have a strong focus on we're living in an unnatural world, and how can we bring more of the natural part back, as you're saying, like some devices, grounding mats, and so on. But what are some of your favorite tech biohacks to implement?
Right. So some of my favorite tools and technologies would be I mentioned red light therapy earlier. So that's something that I use every day. So I have a red light panel connected to my clear light infrared sauna that I use every morning to get up and running, wake up, do some meditation, some journaling.
And you do 20 minutes, half an hour, or how long?
I usually do like 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And I find infrared sauna particularly good in the morning, and you can pretty easily combine red light therapy with it. So you get the both at the same time. You can also have aromatherapy. So you could have some essential oils, maybe diffused, that help you to wake up. I like to use a traditional dry or Finnish sauna in the more like early evening. It's more of exercise mimetic than infrared sauna. Infrared sauna doesn't really get your heart rate that high. It makes you sweat, but it's not like it's an exercise mimetic. Exercise mimetic is something which is mimicking or having similar effects as doing physical exercise. And the cardiovascular effects of traditional Finnish sauna is much stronger. And it's also good for activating heat shock proteins and genes related to longevity, like FOXO3. But it also taxes your nervous system a little bit, just like exercise. So I like to do that more like in the early evening or after work, while infrared sauna is good to just wake up, maybe some yoga alongside with it, and some stretching. So I like to do that. When I'm at my computer, I also use sometimes red light therapy with the FlexBeam device, which is a portable device. And yeah, FlexBeam is pretty good if you are traveling as well, so you can take it with you. And I find it's really useful for, like, if you've been in a vehicle or airplane or something long periods of time, or sitting in front of your computer or laptop in bad ergonomic positions or whatever. So for neck area, for example, it's very good. I also like to use different beverages throughout the day. I think whatever you do repeatedly is where you should focus on when it comes to optimization. So if you are, at your computer, for example, then you would have a standing desk or a good chair. In this pandemic time, I used quite a lot of time to optimize my physical ergonomic side, lights and everything that goes on around my computer.
What kind of lights do you have around your computer? So I have, for example, like in my home, I have this special reddish light for the evening, which is some NASA technology. So I'm curious to hear, like, what kind of lights have you set up?
Yeah, I mean, I have the Elgato. I guess these are Elgato Air lights, which I can control the color temperature and strength pretty easily, and that's also nice as a kind of a daylight lamp during the day and keep you alert. And in the evening, I use the Philips Hue lights to get more of a red hue.
And I'm curious about that because the Philips Hue seems so easy. But I also hear people in the biohacking circles being like, "Oh, but it has Bluetooth." What's your take on that? Is Philips Hue perfectly fine, and we have so much EMF around us anyway?
Yeah, I think the whole EMF thing has got out of hand in the biohacking circles. Like, people are way more concerned about electromagnetic radiation than what it's worth. I just have not been able to convince myself by looking at the data that it has any effect of eliminating it. But what I do trust is some of the research when it comes to low-level inflammation and so on. I don't think EMF in today's devices is necessarily going to cause you cancer unless you use your phone against your head 24 hours per day. But if you are using a source of radiation, like a mobile device or a Bluetooth-enabled device, what is important is distance to your body. And you actually get from one cell phone call, you get more radiation than from a Wi-Fi router for the whole year in one call. So I'm not that worried about Wi-Fi networks.
So
But
that's
if
a
I
call
can,
with your mom, the one that lasts forever where she doesn't want to hang up? Or is it like a short call? How long are we looking?
yeah, I like to use Bluetooth, or just like air like these air tubes,
Yeah.
if I'm having phone calls, or I just use a speaker. I don't like to use a phone against my head anyway. I prefer, doing my calls like this with a proper microphone. So I hate using a mobile device. So, but what I was saying about the radiation aspect is that a 5G, 4G, 3G connection to your phone is worse than your Wi-Fi, and your Wi-Fi is worse than Bluetooth. And Bluetooth has different categories and layers, but in the end, the distance to your body is important. Like the effect of the radiation gets exponentially lower the further away you take the device from your body. So with a Bluetooth enabled light, which is far away from your body, I'm not worried about that. And the other aspect is sampling rate, how often it's making that connection. And like I use the Oura Ring, for example, to track my sleep. You have the airplane mode for those. So I'm reducing or mitigating the potential damage from electromagnetic fields as much as I can. So if I can wire my computer through Ethernet, I do that rather than Wi-Fi. Under my table, I have some cables, but I put also a EMF protecting blanket. In my bed, I have EMF protecting sheets. I sometimes use pants and stuff like that. But it's just
What kind of sheets are that? I'm curious about I really like the things where you kind of buy it once and it's easy. Just like I have a water filter. That's easy. I have an air filter. That's easy. It's not something I have to do constantly.
Yeah, for the sheets, I use steady body sheets from Unikulma, which is a Finnish company that patented a grounding uh, sheet that doesn't use the wire to the ground at all. So it's more of a physics thing. And it's actually a medical device. So it has been registered as a medical device. So it's not some woo-woo thing you get from China. So that's what I have for my bed. But in the end, like um, I would say like that in terms of your health, there are environmental pollutants, several different ones. I mean, you have poor air quality, you have light pollution, like unoptimal frequencies of light throughout the day compared to your biology. Then you have maybe you have some food additives or chemicals in the agriculture production. Then you might have electromagnetic fields and pollution. Then you might have stress and emails and all kinds of things. I mean, all of these are cumulative, and they have a cumulative effect on low-level inflammation and stress biomarkers and other things, and effects on things like mitochondria. So, and your recovery rate. So I see EMF as one additional thing on top of a pile of other things. So there are probably more significant things to focus on, like diet and exercise, and sleep, than EMF protection. But some people seem, especially in the I guess light water magnetism kind of online community, they tend to believe this EMF stuff is the cornerstone of everything. I mean, it's their opinion, but I don't see in my biomarkers uh, measurable effects compared to dietary or exercise, for example. So I would start from those as big building blocks and sleep optimization before I would move into geeking on other, like details or even things like genetics. So I would just start with biomarkers before, like blood biomarkers, before I go into genetics. And I would start with
What kind of blood
people.
biomarkers would you start with?
Uh, can you repeat?
What blood biomarkers would you start with? So someone is listening being like, all right, I like what Teemu is saying. I don't need to worry about my Wi-Fi. I can have my Bluetooth, my Bose device, and so on. I'm going to follow the advice of blood markers. Where would you start?
Yeah, so obviously I would look into like just the general categories. I would look at some lipid biomarkers. So expand a little bit on traditional cholesterol levels, looking at LDL, HDL, triglycerides, but also the particle size and components that are in the bloodstream. So if you can break down LDL, HDL into smaller components, more accurate measurements, that's at least from cardiovascular perspective, pretty good. But the other thing is blood sugar regulation for sure, like hemoglobin A1C, like long-term blood sugar, and maybe insulin response, glucose, fasting blood glucose, pretty easy to measure at home. And then if you are into a ketogenic diet, then you would maybe measure your blood sugar in combination with your ketone bodies, and you would derive kind of glucose ketone index GKI out of that if you want to figure out if you're in a therapeutic zone or more of maintenance zone from a metabolic perspective. Then I would look into inflammation, and for inflammation I would look at things like highly sensitive C-reactive protein, homocysteine. I would say are some of the key like top level, high level things to look into in terms of inflammation. But you could also look at your liver values, kidney values, and if anything is off, then I would dive deeper and maybe look at different organ functions more closely. Maybe even if things are unexplained, maybe heavy metals, stuff like that. But in the end, doing these measurements is a good idea to do every half a year. So especially if you do lifestyle changes, dietary interventions, or if you exercise heavily, work heavily, these things can fluctuate. And yeah, I forgot to mention hormones. So obviously a lot of these things then contribute to hormonal status. And those are some things that you may want to take a look at, just like things like testosterone, of course, in women estrogen levels. You may want to look at some of the sex hormones if you're looking into performance and motivation and results. For sure, stress tends to convert things like testosterone into cortisol. So cortisol is key, of course. But in the end, if you are looking into nutritional status and you're optimizing your nutritional intake, if you're taking supplements, there's definitely some major categories that you may want to take a look at, more closer look, like vitamin D, of course, for immune system function, full blood analysis for the different immune system cells. That might also reveal some underlying infection, or viral or bacterial or parasites. If your immune system cells seem to be elevated on certain areas or massively reduced. So in the end, it's about balance, homeostasis, figuring out what is, the balance, and the body has these compensatory mechanisms. For example, if you are injured, it will increase your cholesterol levels because the carrier doesn't mean that you're eating a lot of like crap, but it can be just that because you're sick, your cholesterol levels will be elevated. And in that case, it's good to understand the context. When it comes to nutritional intake, you could go into much more into detail, like with minerals and microminerals and different vitamins. But I would say vitamin D is probably the easiest and fastest that everyone should be measuring if you're taking it. to figure out that you're not, dosing incorrectly. So I think supplements in general are supplements. I mean, they are on top of a healthy, well-rounded diet. So to address some shortcomings or to boost or elevate certain aspects of your life. It could be exercise or focus or work. And when it comes to those things, like people tend to overdo some things in the name of performance or muscle growth or whatever. So, which might not be that healthy, like taking too much nootropics, for example. If you feel depressed and mood swings and things like that, it might be that you're just taking too much different things and you're taxing your system.
I had a
When it comes
talk
to-
with Ted, the doctor who also is part of Blue Canatine, and he explained as well, like, you shouldn't take nootropics unless you have like your base level of health, because you might be overrunning different systems. So it's like, nootropics are amazing. He formulated some, but he's like, you need to make sure that your general health is all right, your levels and so on, or you might be overrunning the system. I think that was a pretty good advice as well. As you're saying as well, it's about basics, and it's not like it's the 80-20. So like, whereas those 20% of the effort where you get 80% of the results. So instead of just focusing on supplements, then make sure you have a healthy diet. And it's the same as you're saying with EMF. EMF probably have a effect, but it's like there's probably something that's more important where you can start, at least according to the data that you have seen.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to focus and attention, often like just sleeping enough is a good idea, or having little exercise, because brain-derived neurotropic factors are massively elevated when you do like heavy lifting and exercise. So exercising your body has an effect on your mind. Correcting your gut, like if you have any issues with the gut or gut microbiome, that might have a cognitive effect.
Yeah.
But in the end, a lot of nootropics are actually helping blood sugar regulation. So it helps you to focus because your blood sugar is not fluctuating that much. Like dietary interventions like the ketogenic diet might be one way to elevate focus and attention. And I use some supplements like ginseng is very powerful for blood sugar regulation, some medicinal mushrooms. I like to use extracts and tinctures myself for modulating the immune system, or getting some agents that are good for blood sugar regulation. And many of them also have these vasodilating effects. So they expand capillaries and enhance nutrient delivery. Many nootropics have this particular effect. Vimposetin comes to my mind, which is a more, I think, at least in my country, it's a pharmaceutical drug, but it's often in supplements. But there are some natural ways to expand your capillaries, like putting a little bit of chili into your coffee, for example. Maybe
Instead
some
of the
chocolate.
milk, chili instead of milk in the coffee. I think that's something for people to test.
Yeah, just a little bit like that. It has thermogenic properties and some vasodilating effects. And one thing, of course, is plant polyphenols. Like some of the compounds in blueberries or chocolate seem to have also cognitive effects, and might be because of their neuroprotective or effects on as an antioxidant on a cellular level. So I see that the most well-rounded nootropics are the ones that are helping you to oil your system. So it's kind of helping the existing system run better, so that you have building blocks for neural myelination. Like, I mean, you could have like some kale, you could have some omega-3 oils, whatever, and maybe your eggs for the choline. A lot of people take like choline supplements for nootropic effects. I mean, you can have a couple of eggs also. It's good to study like what are the natural sources of some of these things, and often like you get a pretty good effect already by having some strong plants. And that's the
Teemu,
nature aspect. So I see a lot of American biohacking is about supplements, and European thing is much more about like some I guess like um, full spectrum
yeah,
like extracts. Also Asia, like if you look at Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, like things like ashwagandha or uh, etc. Or certain ginsengs. I mean, instead of
Teemu,
just having an
you
extract of a specific compound, you could
yeah,
have like the whole plant.
you mentioned kale, and I've been putting a lot of kale in my smoothies and so on. But Dave Asprey has really been after that kale lately, bashing kale all the time. Like, what? Why is he doing that? And what has he misunderstood? Or like, what do we need to do to be able to eat that kale? Because I'm seeing too many videos where he is yelling at my kale, and I'm like, I like my kale. What's wrong?
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's referring to the oxalates or whatever in it, but I mean, you have to eat a lot to get some detrimental effects. Like seriously, um, there is much more in it um, as an investment in yourself than one specific compound that might have like some issues. If you're worried about that, you can or of course you can.
You can damp it as well, right? If some hot water and so on, you get some of
Yeah,
the
you
oxalate
can
out.
you can just blanch it quickly.
Yeah.
That's one way. But I mean, there's better stuff than kale that grows on my front yard right now, like things like nettles and dandelions and food that is free, which is
Yeah.
much stronger and better than anything you can buy from the supermarket. So I would recommend people to take like 1 meter of dandelion leaves per day for 1 month and see the results. Like it is pretty good, and you also get other effects like kidney function, etc., will be greatly improved. So, so there are natural plants that grown as weeds on our yards that is better than anything you can buy from the supermarket and any of the biohackers are marketing to you. Yeah.
I find that pretty interesting because, again, if someone Googles your name, they will see pictures with you with weird things on your head. So you have definitely tested a lot of technology, but often when I hear you talk and so on, you're actually much more of an advocate of like what are the natural things you can do, and I think that testifies as well to like what actually works and doesn't work. I love to see that both you and Ollie as well, that I follow a lot. Ollie is a big focus as well, one of the other authors of the Biohackers Handbook and one of your partners on the natural part. If someone is like, because time is running and you had to give some quick recommendations for some natural hacks that people can do. So if the listeners are sitting and thinking, oh, that Timo guy, he's been around. If he could give me like 5 top advice for nature, what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, around this time, if you are paying attention, the pine trees are going to produce some pollen, and plant pollens are pretty effective. I mean, if you have like pollen allergies, um, exposing yourself to pollen is one way to uh, introduce these things into your system in a way that makes you more resilient. So maybe even might reduce allergic reactions. So honey is a good way to get exposed, like real natural honey with sun filter, to get exposed to the compounds in pollen. But if you just take a plastic bag and you shake a pine tree, uh, or you put the bag around some of the cones that have pollen in it, you can gather that stuff, and it has 4 different hormones at least that are related to testosterone directly. Then you could collect something like nettle roots.
Let me just get that again. So you find a pine tree, you take a plastic bag, and what do you put down there, and what do you do?
Yeah, you just put like at the time when it's producing pollen. So when you
Yeah,
shake one of the branches, it will release this yellow powder. So
yeah.
you just put the bag around the branch and you shake it up, and you can collect the pollen. And that pollen is good as it is to put on your salad dressings or whatever. But if you want to really like become a biohacker, you can make an alcohol extract out of it. So you put some alcohol in it, and you extract for 3 to 6 weeks, and then you filter it out, and you get this tincture that has the compounds, these hormonal compounds. Many of these, like pollens and new growth factors and so on trees at this time of the year, like spruce sprouts, pine sprouts, can also be really high on vitamin C. And I like to also make extracts out of the pine shoots and spruce shoots. And basically, to go back to my hormone hack, like you get this pollen, it's free, it grows everywhere, and you make an extract out of it. If you want to reduce the risk of testosterone, the free testosterone, then converting to estrogen, you can collect some nettle roots. So everyone knows the nettle, the stinging nettle. You take the root out, you clean it up, you make a tincture out of that as well. You just cut it into pieces and you use the root, and it has compounds that reduce the conversion of free testosterone into estrogen. So that might be also a good herbal thing if you are stressed, which you can make for free. You can collect also nettle leaves and seeds as well later in summer. And nettle has high contents of iron. If you're a woman and you have low iron levels, that's a pretty good natural source for it. It's good if you're exercising to use some nettle powder, for example, in your food. But it's also good for, it has some compounds that are effective in reducing, like a natural antihistamine. So it's reducing allergic reactions as well. You could use that instead of an antihistamine. And what else? Like, I mentioned dandelions. Dandelion leaves are, the French name pissenlit is a reference to the urinating aspect of it. So it makes you urinate. So it has a diuretic effect, but in that way it's a kidney tonic, but very, very strong plant as well. And you can also collect dandelion flowers and take it tastes like floury butter almost. Like those are really nice to just take the shoots or remove the yellow things and throw them in your salad, for example. So there's a lot of good stuff on your front yard, and I would encourage people to have like big plate of wild plants, especially this time of the year when you can collect them. I'm basically trying to eat every day a wild salad, like at least 15 different plants, and I get much stronger nootropic effect from a plate like that than I would get any supplement that I can order from US. So I don't know what's in some of those plants, but it's definitely good for me. I feel it. So yeah, those are some of the tips and tricks. It's free, but like more on a technological side. Yeah. So yeah, I like to have like one of my legs in nature and one of them in a future or more technological side. I think we need both, and we are kind of connected to both as human beings. So as technological interventions, I would basically, if I think about what are the things that I get, most value out of, is I've used a lot of different measurement tools and techniques and so on. And in the end, the Oura Ring is one of the most user-friendly, and a lot of biohackers, of course, love that one. But just like it could be any device that is able to measure your resting heart rate over time, at sleep and during the day. And that gives you a pretty good general indicator of your health, long-term, like rested heart rate. If you combine that with heart rate variability, then you get especially at sleep, then you get a good idea about your recovery rate, and you could detect potential health issues, underlying health issues, or overburden of stress like I've noticed in my own case, like average HRV values can be reduced for long periods of time if you are stressed and overworked. And even if you sleep really well, a few nights, maybe a week, it's not returning to baseline until there's some time, especially also with resting heart rate. So some of the cardiovascular parameters and nervous system parameters, they have a little delay in a way in terms of recovery when you actually see like things are really returning to normal. And that's where you can also see the effects of exercise. In short term, they can reduce the values. So if you over exercise, you will see that it's not good. But they have a super compensating effect. So if you exercise at high heart rate um, zones, your resting heart rate tends to go lower than your typical average. So that's one of the things that is related to longevity. Like, I mean, if you can lower your resting heart rate, your heart is a mechanical pump. So if you reduce the beats per minute that it's making on a typical day, that's already increasing its duration or battery for the rest of your life. So over time. So yeah, it's interesting to pay attention to these things. But many of these like biohacks are actually pretty much free, like ice baths and cold therapy and breathing techniques. I get a lot of benefits from breathing and meditation techniques, and I didn't really fully understand those things until I started doing them every day. I don't think you can get the benefits of breathing techniques or meditation or cold therapy by doing it once a week or twice a week. You have to do it every single day to actually notice what's going on and actually learn to use those techniques and get the benefits. So this year I started doing like 1.5 hour breathing sessions every morning, and I combined that
Fantastic.
with meditation, and it got out of hand. Like I did like 2 to 3 hour sessions, and um, for on a daily basis, like from 9 a.m. to around midday, I was just like doing breathing and meditation stuff, and I just didn't feel like stopping. And before that, I had like maybe hard time sitting a long time in a meditation or doing some of these things, but there is a way to get yourself into a state where you actually start to enjoy it so much you don't want to stop. So it's the same for exercise, I guess. Like for a lot of people, it's hard to start, but once you get into it, then it becomes a drug. And some of these recovery techniques are very good things to get addicted to, for sure. If you know what I mean.
Definitely better than Netflix and so many other things. Timo, our time is running. I think we could talk for days, and there's a million things I would like to ask you as well. But in respect of your time as well, and the normal episode length, if you had to round off with like one advice for the listeners on how to live a happy, healthy, and meaningful life, what would that be?
Well, uh, health in the end is more than just the absence of diagnosed disease. So if you can figure out in your own case what is the optimal balance of things, you're already far. And most people, they miss this kind of experience. They don't know how good they could feel until they actually reach that state. And that's the irony or paradox of human consciousness, that you, in a specific state, you would not be even able to comprehend how good you could feel. And that's why I encourage people to experiment with these things and try to get their system into an equilibrium or a homeostatic state, and finding out like a proper balance from a nervous system, from a dietary perspective, from recovery perspective, from being active to blood biomarkers and beyond. I've figured out that that's where the health and performance really is the ability to bounce back. It's not about being able to put more gears in or accelerate things or being faster or stronger, but it's about finding the balance that works for you. Like I've met so many people who stressed themselves to death and got over training symptoms or just burnout symptoms. And there's a lot of biohacking that can actually speed up you to get into a like overblown state, because it's so easy then to just go on a intermittent fasting and to have a little bit of bulletproof coffee or whatever and some nootropics and put a few more cycles into your day. But in the end, you're burning the candle even more from both ends if you do that. And it's the art, it really is to know how to rest vigorously. And many people don't know how to do that. And most of the biohacks that I do that I find most beneficial are the ones that speed up recovery, not to speed up performance. And
Interesting you're saying that as well. I had a former Olympian. He's been like 5 Olympics and medalist and so on. And one of his key things was like everyone can go hard. And I think that's what you're saying as well. You can push yourself with more and more biohacks. But he said the key is recovery. That's what makes the difference, getting the right recovery. Yeah. So it's interesting to hear from different walks of life, whether it's biohacking or the Olympics, participating in sports and so on, seeing like what makes the difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Rest is half of my training, you could say. So if people are interested to learn more about, some of our material and stuff that we do, the Biohackers Handbook is of course pretty good. And we have curated some products and also some online courses that we developed at biohackerscenter.com. If you're interested in the foraging stuff, we are actually now working on a wild herb course in English language together with Sami Talberg, who is a wild herb chef, and we've been filming that one, and it should come out in a month.
Nice.
And
what about the summit? When will we be able to gather again?
Yeah, the Biohacker Summit happens this year in Helsinki, Finland. If I remember correctly, it's in October 22nd to 23rd or something like this, or 24th. And I'm pretty confident things are going to run now. Like the political will is there to get the events back up and running, and it looks pretty good for autumn. And next year, 2022, we're going to have our event in Amsterdam. The date is sometime in August. We haven't yet confirmed the new date, but that's going to happen. And we also have Biohacker Summit YouTube channel where you can watch some of our previous presentations, as well as some of the live shows and webinars that we do if you're interested in biohacking.
Fantastic. And you're on Instagram. Where else should people find you? I'll make sure to put the handles and so on in the show notes.
Right. Yeah, it's at Biohacking book, at Biohacking book, and also at Biohacker Summit. Those are the main channels. Like the Biohacking book is sharing a lot of biohacks and tips and tricks, and Biohacker Summit as well. And we also have Health Hacking Summit, which is our fully online event and conference that's happening every half a year or so. And we're going to have another one in the next few months as well. And yeah, my personal handle on Instagram is TAR1 and NA, where I have more of my nature photos and stuff like that.
I'll make sure to share that as well. Teemu,
very cool.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing. I look forward to seeing you in real life again, whether it's dancing at the end of one of the good summits at a techno party with a beach, or whether it's going to be over at sea or something else out in nature. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, that was an amazing party, and that's definitely going to happen if I say so. It's going to be alongside with this year's Biohacker Summit as well. We're going to have another beach party. Looking forward to having you there as well. And yeah, with that, I mean, I wish everyone an extremely healthy rest of the week and stay optimized.
Thanks.